Commercial U show here at the State Fair of Virginia. Our first class today is our Hair Sheep Division. We have one entry by Mariah Delosier of Pittsylvania County.
We Good morning. Definitely honor and privilege to be back again. I talked with Dr. Griner the other day about sunshine. I think this is my 6th day, including last year, Virginia, and the first day that I've seen the sunshine, and so it's beautiful. I'm excited to be here, kind of fall-like, and excited to work through the commercial U's. We've got a single entry Dorper, and tell you what, the Dorper deal in Texas has really caught hold, and rightfully so. A very practical breed that does a lot on a little, very prolific and extremely valuable from a commercial standpoint, as well as they're making definitely some waves in the show lamb industry as well. This is a nice entry. I think you really appreciate her for what she does, and she does that very well, and that's just a tremendous amount of mass and body, very functional in terms of her basic build, a sheep that's dimensional from every angle you view her in. Awfully nice entry. Let's congratulate this young lady with a round of applause.
And that's a first place for Mariah Delosier of Pittsylvania County. We'll now have our white face cross division. We have 8 in this class. We have Alyssa Kopp of Washington County, Ava Jenkins Hettinger of Madison, Grayson Long of Rockingham, Rachel DeBoer of Madison County, Bella Gibson of Louisa, Emma Wise Carver of Frederick, Ella Earhart of Augusta, and Brenna Pennybacker of Rockingham. We need our whiteface division in the ready area. Whiteface division, Whitley Kopp, Alyssa Kopp, Taylor Mitchell, Ella Earhart, and Brenna Pennybacker.
four ewe lambs in here that separate themselves from the others from a mass and total dimension standpoint. And with that being said, I still think our class winner excels in those regards. A sheep that's extremely big-chested when you get in front of her. For me, she is as big and bold up high as anything in class and remains very practical and consistent in her depth of body as we evaluate her from chest to flank. The biggest in terms of her upper pin shape, as big as anything when we read her across the plane of her stifle. Is she as heavy duty at the surface as the ewe that comes in second? Probably not. And that's where I think we could fix her. But an awfully nice class winner. Sheep that comes in second, just very burly in terms of her build. One that may lay just a nickel better at the point of her shoulder than our class winner. But I think as you put these to the side, she studies to me to be just a nickel shorter bodied. And then as we evaluate her flank in relation to her chest, she has a tendency to get just a touch tighter in that regard, but an awfully, awfully powerful sheep. One that comes in third is interesting. She's probably as fresh in terms of the front 1/3 of her body as anything. But as I get up over the top side of her skeleton, I'd like to change the way she is designed right through the center of her loin. I'd like to stouten her up in terms of her foundation. Then she has a tendency to get just a touch more awkward in terms of the way she's designed there at her hock. If we could make that just a nickel more attractive, I think that sheep rivals our class winner. Ewe that comes out next is the most immature in terms of her build. She's the freshest in terms of her body shape. I love the way her blade lays into her body. I love the way her neck comes out the top side of her shoulder. In this particular class, she's the one of the top five that's the most limited in terms of mass because of her rib cage. She gets the flattest right through the center of her cavity. She also needs to be just a notch deeper and stouter in terms of the way she hooks her loin to the front side of her hip. But that's extremely high quality sheep. I love the feet and legs. I love the hip and hind leg posture. Need to stouten that one up throughout. Then we'll round the class out with a sheep that's got a really tall shoulder, a sheep that's got a really big rack shape. From the side, we need to shove her up in her breastplate. We need to moderate her just a notch there in her rear rib and flank. Congratulate these exhibitors one more time.
From our white-face cross division, first place goes to Brenny Pennybacker. Second place, Ella Earhart. Third, Emma Wisecarver. Fourth, Rachel DeBoer. Fifth, Bella Gibson. Sixth, Ava Jenkins Hettinger. Seventh, Grayson Long. And eighth, Alyssa Kopp. We'll now have our white-face division with 5 entries. We have Whitley Kopp of Washington, Alyssa Kopp of Washington, Taylor Mitchell of Essex, Ella Earhart of Augusta, and Brenna Pennybacker from Rockingham. Chloe Smith, please check in. Chloe Smith, please check in.
I think it's pretty evident that we have some practical traits, a depth, rib, and flesh, that the ewe that begins has an overwhelming advantage against her contemporaries. She's a sheep that offers us some extra length of body. She also offers us some extra mass and total dimension. This one is, without a doubt, the biggest in terms of her upper hip and pin set. She's the stoutest as you take her to the ground in terms of her foot and foundation. A sheep that gets a little awkward in terms of how she holds her neck. Now I don't know if she's just kind of fighting the brace or stiff-necked or whatever, but it kind of gives you a challenge at times on the brace when we turn her loose. Though I think and read her lower skeleton, I think that sheep is plenty sound enough. I think a ewe lamb that's just kind of at a disadvantage because of her size and performance today is in second. But I like this one's build and design and function as good as anything. She is extremely fresh when you get up over the top of her body. She's one that proportions extremely good in terms of having a practical flank and still a youthful chest floor. A sheep that's made specifically when we're talking about the ewe here in third. She's made better in her upper hip. She's sounder in terms of the way she utilizes her hock and pastern. I think that's an awfully nice sheep. Again, just kind of runs out of gas when we compare her to a class winner that's quite a bit more advanced. Sheep that comes in third, without a doubt, is backed by more performance comparative to the ewe lamb that preceded her. She does have more spring to the center of her body. She is bigger in terms of her chest floor. For me, though, she needs to be freshened. She needs to be a little thicker in terms of her skin. She, too, gets a little rounder and steeper in terms of her hip structure, and like to square her up in the way she comes to the surface off of her rear, too. Ewe that comes out next, again, very, very fresh in terms of her appearance. A ewe that, for me, as we break these down and get into them, she's just a narrower option as we study her up front. She has a tendency to get just a little steeper and narrower in terms of her hip structure. Then we'll round the class out with a ewe that I really appreciate just in terms of boldness and stoutness and muscularity. She needs to be improved a notch from the profile. She gets a little piecey in her top line and a little steeper out of her hip. Congratulate these exhibitors one more time.
From your white-faced division, first place goes to Brenna Pennybacker, second place to Whitley Kopp, third to Ella Earhart, fourth to Alyssa Kopp, and fifth to Taylor Mitchell. We're now going to start our black-faced crossbred lightweight division. In Class 1, Taylor Mitchell of Essex, Chloe Smith of Montgomery, Aaron Osborne of Smith, Stella Gibson of Louisa, Abigail Miller of Wythe, Chloe Smith from Montgomery, Willa Price from Fauquier, Levi Osborne from Smith, Ella Miller from Wythe, and Emma Wisecarver from Frederick. We'll need Class 2 lightweights to be in the ready area. Class 2 lightweight black-faced crossbreds. Hannah Giesemann, Campbell Bosserman, Ashton Baldwin, Melena Ritchie, Georgia Baldwin, Becca Horst, Eli Gibson, Daniel James, Henrik Wells, Desiree Ziegler, Liam Morris, Mason Beamer, and Isaac Miller.
actually played almost well for them. Had to stay off of it. No, they did play a decent game last night. What you got? 23 what?
Very, very fun pair to sort through, very competitive. And we discussed this quite a bit yesterday. There's give and take in this pair. If you get up over the top of him and judge him just based upon mass and center body, the blue sheep that's in second has class-leading advantages there. But I think when you take him to the side and get the full picture, the sheep that begins, I just love in terms of how correct she is from the top of her blade to the center of her hip, how proportionate she is from her back to her rear rib and flank. And then she's got a distinct advantage as we take her to the surface and evaluate her in terms of strength of pastern and attractiveness in the way she's built off of her rear structure. I guess we live in a world leg wool is definitely important, and if you don't think it is, try to sell babies without them because it's impossible. And that becomes an issue. The sheep in second is a little longer in terms of her pasterns, both front and back. She's a sheep that's not as athletic and attractive in terms of the way she functions out of her rear skeleton, and that becomes a placing factor in my mind when we're splitting hairs on the front end of this class. I love the freshness, though, that she offers us. I love the rib cage and the center cavity that she has. When we turn them loose, though, to me, the blue sheep has a tendency to get a little lower and rounder through the front of her shoulder. She has a tendency to get just a touch tighter as you study her in terms of her rear flank. But an awfully good pair to discuss. Sheep that comes out next, I just read to be too upright in terms of the angle to her blade, and it's evident in the way the neck comes a little lower out of the top of her shoulder. She has trouble remaining consistent in terms of her top line, both when we set them in motion and when we plant them. But here's one that's radical in terms of her shape. She really progresses as we study her from rack to dock in terms of just width and total dimension. We need to change that one ever so from a structural standpoint. I probably had the ewe as they come in the gate that's in fourth, a spot or two higher. She is that from the side appears to be really practical in terms of her build. She appears to be really functional in terms of her structure. When you get up over the top side of them, it's pretty evident that she is the most limited in terms of her center cavity, and because of that, she gets a little too narrow for me right in behind the backside of her blade. Of the top four, she's the one that needs to be pulled apart more at the in terms of her pins and be a little bigger in terms of her upper hip. Sheep that comes in fifth here is one that needs to balance a little better when we put them to the side. I need to shorten the blade length in her. I need to moderate her in her rear rib and flank. If you get the opportunity, grab a hold of that one's loin edge, though. As impressive as we've seen to this point, just in terms of depth. Really good class. Again, congratulate these kids.
Results from your first class of lightweight black-faced ewes. First place goes to Abigail Miller. Second, Emma Wise Carver. Third, Stella Gibson. Fourth, Ella Miller. Fifth, Levi Osborne. Sixth, Aaron Osborne. Seventh, Willa Price. Eighth, Chloe Smith. Ninth, Chloe Smith. And 10th, Taylor Mitchell. For Class 2 lightweights, we have Hannah Giesemann of Charlotte, Campbell Bosserman of Nelson, Ashton Baldwin of Culpeper, Melena Ritchie of Rockingham, Georgia Baldwin of Appomattox, Becca Horst from Rockingham, Eli Gibson from Louisa, Daniel James from Madison, Henrik Wells from Rockbridge, Desiree Ziegler from Virginia Beach, Liam Morris from Augusta, Mason Beamer from Rockingham, and Isaac Miller from Wythe County. If you're in Class 3, please check in. Class 3, lightweights, Hayden Rubush, Zoe Breeden, Caitlin Mayberry, Caitlin James, Ella Miller, Reagan Babb, Hayden Rubush, Lily Bowman, Eli Gibson, Sarah Cron, Daisy Gay, and Emma Donnelly. Attention in the barns, if you want to add or take away from the sale list today for sheep and goats, please make your adjustments at the info tent as soon as possible. Again, if you're selling sheep or goats today, please go to the info tent and add your animals to the list or take them off. Again, that's at the info tent at the top of the barn. Thank you.
probably one of the deeper classes that we've sorted through over the last few days, just in terms of our top 5 and the consistency in terms of quality. Sheep that begins, I think, as they enter the gate, that's the one that grabs your attention just in terms of functionality and quality. Extremely big-footed and sound-featured kind of a sheep. A ewe that's very fresh in terms of her body shape. She's extremely dimensional up high. I love the function and attractiveness in her hip and hind leg. A ewe that I think has some advantages as we take her to the surface, just in being a touch more attractive in her hind structure, a little bit shorter in terms of pastern shape. And then as we get in front of them, I think that one's blade and breastplate are just put in her just a notch better. Does she read just a tick long in terms of the length of her blade? I think so. But that's a really practical, good ewe to begin the class. The sheep that comes out here in second is one that I love in terms of her shape. She's really bold and big out of the back of her blade. She too is a sheep that has some natural stoutness and dimension as we go to the surface. For me, I thought she got just a little off in terms of her hip structure. I thought she got just a tick bolder as we got in right to the point of her shoulder comparative to our class winner. But she's got some definite advantage in total power and dimension when we talk about her into the sheep that sets in third place. The ewe lamb that's in third, love the height of her shoulder, love the extension that she has ahead of her blade. That one gives you an awesome look up through the front 1/3 of her body. It's kind of from her last rib back we need to change her. She gets a little bit piecier in how she connects her loin into the front side of her hip. Ultimately, she's not as wide and stout in her upper hip or in terms of her pin set. And then that final view when we get in front of those 3 sheep, she's the one that's the most limited from a structural stoutness standpoint. Ewe lamb the ewe lamb that comes in fourth here, I love the moderation that she offers us. I love the spring and depth and dimension that she offers to her rib. When we turn these loose, here's one that has a tendency to get just a little too low in terms of her front 1/3. A sheep that also, I told the young lady, we need to make her just a notch better in terms of the way she's built there through the center of her loin. Then we'll round the class out with perhaps the densest sheep in here, extremely big and bold right out of the back of her blade. This one's big and dimensional when you get in behind him. For me, she gets to be a little quicker in terms of her maturity pattern. She's shorter neck, shorter canoned option in this particular class. She's a sheep that we need to make just a little bit more attractive as we study her through the front 1/3 of her body. But I definitely value and appreciate the stoutness and power that she offers. Great class.
Class 2 results. First place goes to Henrik Wells of Rockbridge. Second goes to Liam Morris of Augusta. Third, Isaac Miller. Fourth, Becca Horst. Fifth, Desiree Ziegler. Sixth, Mason Beamer. Seventh, Ashton Baldwin. Eighth, Hannah Giesemann. Ninth, Daniel James. 10th, Georgia Baldwin. 11th, Campbell Bosserman. 12th, Eli Gibson. And 13th, Melena Ritchie. Our final class of lightweights is entering the ring, Class 3. We have Hayden Rubush of Augusta with 2 entries. Zoe Breeden from Augusta, Caitlin Mayberry of Appomattox, Caitlin James from Madison, Ella Miller from Wythe, Reagan Babb from Chesapeake City, Lily Bowman from Montgomery, Eli Gibson from Louisa, Sarah Cron from Rockingham, Daisy Gay from Madison, and Emma Donnelly from Clark. If you're in Class 1 middleweight crossbreds, Class 1 middleweights, you can check in. Carly Buchanan, Olivia Fisher, Wyatt Holloway, Connor Spangler, Charlotte Bowman, Landon Kibler, Charity Osborne, Marie-Claire DeRozier, Jamison Rivard, Samantha Wills, Georgia Baldwin, and Charlotte Bowman. Again, we'll be calling back first, second, and third from classes 1, 2, and 3 for our lightweight champion drive. That's first, second, and third places from lightweight division class 1, 2, and 3 right after this. Again, attention in the barns, if you are selling sheep and goats today, that list will be pulled at 10:30. That list will be pulled at 10:30, so please make your changes to the sheep and goat sales sheet in the info tent by 10:30.
In my opinion, I haven't sorted as many shows as some of the people probably here, but one of the hardest things to do, they say, you know, a pattern instead of pattern. Well, sometimes that becomes challenging, and I think that as you sort through livestock, in my mind at least, the best one should win. You should have an ideal of or an image in your mind of what you think ideal is, and then you're trying to satisfy that. And so if you say pattern-wise, to me, in my mind, as I'm sorting the top two, this is one of the first times I've broke pattern the last few days, because the one that I've typically gravitated towards is a sheep that's in second. But then I start trying to poke holes in the class winner, and it becomes challenging. She's an awfully good sheep. She's just built a little bit more moderate in terms of her kind. But if you talk about things balancing and put together and blending extremely well, that sheep does that very well in my mind. And she does that with having a distinct advantage in center skeletal width, mass and spread up high, width and dimension in the upper portion of her hip, and then power and stoutness there at the base of her stifle. Is she the geekiest neck? No. Is she the shallowest and most youthful at the floor of her chest? No. But is all that blend and does all that match? 100%. And that sheep to me is just overwhelming from a mass standpoint. She gets out and functions very well. That's a very impressive animal. You that comes out in second, probably a little more my kind in terms of being taller, top of her shoulder. She's one that when we turn them loose is so consistent in terms of her views. I love her top line. I love her hip and hind leg function. I love the way she balances when we put her to the side. We've got to ask, does she have enough in this particular pair? Is she so overwhelming in terms of her build and function that she should beat the sheep in front of her? In my mind, no. She's a very high quality sheep, but she ran into one that did things about just as good, and she doesn't offer any extra mass, power, or total dimension. But that's an awfully good sheep to be sitting in second. You that comes out next probably mimics our class winner a touch more in type and kind. She is extremely big rib. She is extremely big in terms of her back shape. When we put them into motion, though, she has a tendency to get just a little rounder and coarser there through her lower shoulder. She's the one that shows just a notch of maturity there through her breastplate. She's not ultimately as fresh right through the center of her loin. You that comes out in fourth kind of breaks that pattern, maybe follows our second place a notch more. Here's one that's extremely fresh and youthful in terms of her rib cage. I love the way she proportions chest to flank. When we put this one into motion, though, she's the one that's got a tendency to duck her tail head. She travels with her hind two up underneath herself. And then from a stoutness perspective, in terms of the top three, she's not nearly as big up high in terms of her upper hip. She's not nearly as big and dimensional there at her stifle. Sheep that rounds out the class, I love the fresh shape that she offers us up high. She needs to balance better from chest to flank. Her neck needs to come out just a touch better at the top of her shoulder, and she needs to be wider and flatter there in her loin. Great class.
Class 3 results for our lightweight division. First place goes to Reagan Babb of Chesapeake City. Second to Hayden Rubush, Augusta County. Third, Ella Miller. Fourth, Emma Donnelly. Fifth, Eli Gibson. Sixth, Zoe Breeden. Seventh, Caitlin James. Eighth, Hayden Rubush. Ninth, Lily Bowman. 10th, Daisy Gay. 11th, Sarah Cron. And 12th, Caitlin Mayberry. We'll now have our division drive for lightweight black face crossbreds. From Class 1, we need Abigail Miller, Emma Wisecarver, and Stella Gibson. From Class 2, we need Henrik Wells, Liam Morris, and Isaac Miller. And from Class 3, we have Reagan Babb, Hayden Rubush, and Ella Miller. Again, middleweight division Class 1, you should be checked in. Middleweight division Class 1. As a reminder, the sheep and goat sale sheet will be pulled at 10:30. The sheep and goat sale sheet will be pulled at 10:30. If you need to make changes, please make your way to the info tent to do so. Thank you.
Very competitive lightweight drive. Our Class 1 winner is one that we discussed, being so round and shallow and youthful in terms of her rib cage, and still progressing into a very practical flank, a sheep that's bold in terms of her shape up high. Maybe at times she appears to be just a tick straighter off either end, but very, very competitive view there. Sheep that comes out of Class 2. I love the functionality of this one. Very fresh when you get up over the top side of her. At times she gets maybe just a little, in terms of her blade, a little flatter right through the cavity, but very fresh and youthful. Sheep that we just discussed, powerhouse in this particular lineup. Tremendous shape up high, tremendous production and function in terms of her center cavity and her feet and legs. Very, very competitive lineup. Let's congratulate these, and I'll go get your top three.
Your champion from lightweight division comes from Class 3, exhibited by Reagan Babb of Chesapeake City. Your reserve is second place from that class, and third overall comes from Class 2. So your champion, Reagan Babb, reserve, Hayden Rubush, and third overall, Henrik Wells. Yes. We'll now start our middleweight division. Middleweight Class 1, we have Carly Buchanan of Augusta, Olivia Fisher from Shenandoah, Wyatt Holloway from Rockingham, Connor Spangler from Floyd, Charlotte Bowman from Montgomery, Landon Kibler from Shenandoah, Charity Osborne of Smith, Marie-Claire DeRozier of Shenandoah, Jamison Rivard of Fauquier, Samantha Wills, Fluvanna, Georgia Baldwin of Appomattox, and Charlotte Bowman of Montgomery. Class 2, please check in. Class 2, Lily Bowman, Reagan Gwaltney, Marie-Claire DeRozier, London Vanderhyde, Logan Cassiano, Desiree Ziegler, Emma Donnelly, Ella Earhart, Colton Spangler, Charlotte Bowman, Jackson Kelly, and Ella Miller. Please check in. Marie.
Maybe a little more sort in this particular group. I think it gets challenging to land on the one that you're convinced is the class winner, because there's some give and take here in the top end, and I keep coming to a sheep that gives me the most consistent views, and that's whether we're braced or whether we put them into motion. This one's put together, in my mind, the best in terms of how she's made right through the center of her body cavity, the way her blade lays into her rib cage, the strength and levelness of her top line, and the consistency she offers in terms of her posture, her hip and hind leg. Is she the most extended ahead of her blade? No. Is she the freshest in terms of her body shape and touch? No. But I think that's where the give and take comes in. The sheep that comes out in second, I thought it was really close here between 2 and 3, and as I watch these sheep exit the scale and come directly at me, there's a clear and distinct difference in terms of base width between these two, and the sheep that's in second is pulled apart wider at the floor of her chest. She's more consistent in how she's built from the top of her blade to the point of her shoulder to her knee, and that's very valuable to me. She also is a touch more aggressive in terms of the way she comes right out of the backside of her blade. A very competitive pair here, though. A sheep that I initially might be a spot higher or two is the one that ends up in 3. As we get really critical and start breaking these down, you get in front of this sheep, and she's the one that's the boldest at the point of her shoulder and yet the narrowest at her knee. And that's kind of a relationship that we don't want. If they're going to be bold and stout there, we're going to want to pull them apart, because what that affects is their lower rib cage. And you can tell as this sheep goes down to the base of her rib, she's tapering down underneath. And because of that, she's not nearly as massive in terms of the way she's built up high. So I'd just like to change this one through her lower skeleton. Like to see her neck come out just a nickel higher off the top side of her blade. Very, very interesting sheep here in 4. One that there's views and times where this young man gets her braced and set up, and you think, well, there's one that could win. And then there's times when we turn her loose, we just struggle with her in terms of her top line. I think this one's pushed too far in terms of the angle to her shoulder. I think she's getting to be to the point where she's a little over at her knee, and because of that, she's compensating in her top line. She's getting too weak in her loin. She's a little too high in terms of her tail head, and that makes her drive just a little stiffer and straighter off of her rear too. And then we'll round the class out with a ewe. I told the young lady I love the way she handles. Extremely fresh and bold out of the back of her shoulder. She's really good up high in terms of her rib cage. When we spin her to the side is where we need to change her. We need to moderate her rear rib and flank. We need to strengthen and stouten her ankle. We need to make her just a notch more attractive, and the posture there to her hind leg. Good class. Congratulate these kids one more time.
For For your middleweight division, Class 1 results, first place goes to Olivia Fisher. Second place, Carly Buchanan. Third, Samantha Wills. Fourth, Landon Kibler. Fifth, Marie-Claire DeRozier. Sixth, Wyatt Holloway. Seventh, Charlotte Bowman. Eighth, Charity Osborne. Ninth, Connor Spangler. 10th, Georgia Baldwin. 11th, Charlotte Bowman. And 12th, Jamison Rivard. For Class 2 middleweights, we have Lily Bowman of Montgomery, Reagan Gwaltney of Augusta, Marie-Claire DeRozier of Shenandoah, London Vanderhyde of Pittsylvania, Logan Cassiano of Loudon, Desiree Ziegler, Virginia Beach, Emma Donnelly of Clark, Ella Earhart from Augusta, Colton Spangler from Floyd, Charlotte Bowman of Montgomery, Jackson Kelly of Clark, Ella Miller of Wythe. Class 3, please line up. Class 3, Casey Redifer, Hayden Rubush, Brant Kibler, Liliana Myers, Sarah Cron, Kenna Kearns, Ruth Hale, Sarah Cron, Maddie Evers, Ashton Baldwin, Izzy Capizella, Charity DeLozier, and Caitlin James.
It's a fun trio here on the front end of this class to sort through, and I think we land another sheep, kind of like the previous or two classes ago, that just has a tremendous amount of mass, a tremendous amount of power. Here's one that's an outlier when you get over the top side of him in terms of center skeletal width. He's an outlier in terms of spread and the shape she feeds right in behind her blade. Extremely big and dimensional inner loin shape. A sheep that's not radical in terms of her front end structure, but everything balances again. Her lays onto her body very well. She's consistent in her depth from chest to flank. A sheep that when we set them into motion, I was surprised in a spot or two and how wide they base away from us. She leads the class in terms of width there at her hock and still being able to keep that within her skeleton. Just a very, very powerful individual. A sheep that I was kind of initially intrigued and still am to this point, sets in second. I think when you talk about one being fresh and youthful through the front 1/3 of their body, this one does that very, very well. There's a couple things that I get just a touch critical of him. When we step in front and evaluate them, this one is the narrowest at the floor of his chest. And not that we're just widthing him out, but that kind of tells a story on some things that happen from there back. The sheep is good in terms of his rib, there's no question, but not near full and massive as our class winner. And then as they come out of the scales and then we get an opportunity to watch them base away from us, this is the one that gets the most closed up in terms of her pin set. She gets the narrowest at her hock. So if I could just open this one up throughout her entire skeleton, I think that pair gets quite a bit closer. A sheep that ringside you probably enjoy a lot of pieces of, sets in third. This one's really, really round in terms of her body shape. Really correct in terms of her top line. I love her hip and hind leg posture when we get her parked. Problem is when we get up over the top of them and get our hands on them, she's the plainest and most nondescript in terms of her shape. And then from a functionality standpoint, on the move, this is the one that gets a little close there from behind. She has a tendency to roll there at her ankle and push out at her hock. So I'd like to square that up from a structural standpoint, but this one's got some really, really cool pieces when we put her to the side. Ewe that comes out next, extremely dense in terms of her type and kind, really big and bold and expressive up high. A sheep I'd like to change in terms of her profile. She gets to be reading a little long in terms of her shoulder blade. She gets a little deeper through her chest to moderate her just a touch in her rear rib and flank to make that look balanced just a notch better. And then we've got this the sheep that'll be fifth, one that I told the young lady very exotic when we put her to the side in terms of the bells and whistles she offers us. Very tall-shouldered, very extended ahead of her blade. She runs into sheep that just have more natural substance and power. We get over the top side of her body. She's fifth in terms of spread and dimension pie. She needs to be just a tick bigger in terms of her pin set when we get in from behind. Great. Congratulate these kids one more time.
Results from Class 2 middleweight division. First place goes to Marie Claire DeRozier of Shenandoah. Second to Jackson Kelly of Clark. Third, Logan Cassiano. Fourth, Reagan Gwaltney. Fifth, Desiree Ziegler. Sixth, Emma Donnelly. Seventh, Ella Earhart. Eighth, Lily Bowman. Ninth, Colton Spangler. 10th, London Vanderhyde. 11th, Ella Miller. And 12th, Charlotte Bowman. Our final class of middleweight lambs, Class 3, we have Casey Redifer of Grayson, Hayden Rubush of Augusta, Brant Kibler of Shenandoah, Leliana Myers of Rockingham, Sarah Cron from Rockingham, Kenna Kearns from Frederick, Ruth Hale from Hanover, Sarah Cron from Rockingham, Maddie Evers from Augusta, Ashton Baldwin of Culpeper, Kenna Kearns from Frederick, Izzy Capizella of Louisa, Charity Delozier of Pennsylvania, and Caitlin James from Madison County. After Class 3, we'll have our middleweight division drive. After Class 3, we'll call back first, second, and third places from Classes 1, 2, and 3.
pretty convinced as they hit the gate that this sheep would be in the front end. One that, and we've discussed this throughout the last couple days, just consistency of views. When you turn them loose, man, it's great to get them to look just as good as they were braced, and that's a tribute to the quality of this particular sheep. Dr. Greiner and I were talking about how good showmen are, that you get to a point where they can hide flaws and they can show holes out of these sheep, but when you turn them loose, the story's kind of told. And for me, this one gives me the most consistent views. I love the way she's so youthful up through her front end. I love the way her neck projects off the top side of her blade. To me, she is the biggest and stoutest of the top three in terms of her upper pin shape, or upper hip shape and pin width. And then she's really dimensional there to her stifle, and she does all that with still being so feminine and maternal in terms of her build and look. Sheep that comes out in second's interesting. She's so tall-shouldered and long, kind of, for lack of better words, long-legged, that it makes her look a little shorter-bodied. That kind of happens sometimes. I don't think she's short-bodied, but she perceives to be just a little bit deeper in terms of her chest. And then when we put these things into motion, for me, in terms of her upper hip, I'd like to pull that apart. I'd like to see her base just a tick wider there at her hock. But an extremely, extremely impressive sheep when you get your hands on them. Maybe as big-loined as we've seen to this point. Sheep that comes out in 3, kind of the same story. Fit and presented extremely, extremely well. Massive in terms of the way she comes out of the back of her blade. Really attractive in terms of her neck set. When you get up over the top of them and you view or look for natural progression to her hip, she's the one that's tapering the opposite direction. We need to open her up high in terms of her pin width and upper hip shape to make her more competitive in this particular drive. She too is the one that maybe gets just a nickel closer in terms of her knee. Ewe that comes out in 4th has some really exciting pieces. She is extremely round-bodied. She's extremely massive in her top. She's got a big, wide, deep loin set, and massive in terms of her upper hip shape. Structurally speaking, she's pushed too forward in her blade. She's a little limited in her reach up front, and then she strikes the ground a little shorter and more rigid off of her rear too. Then we'll round the class out with a sheep that I think from a fundamental standpoint is very hard to pick holes in. She's modern in terms of her build. She's dense in terms of her muscularity. A sheep that, to me, when we put her to the side, she gets just a nickel longer in terms of her blade, a touch plainer in terms of her rib cage. She may roll ever so slightly out of her hip. Great class again. Congratulate these kids one more time.
Our final class of middleweight lambs. First place goes to Casey Redifer of Grayson County. Second place goes to Kenna Kearns of Frederick. Third, Kenna Kearns. Fourth, Brent Kibler. Fifth, Leliana Myers. Sixth, Sarah Cron. Seventh, Sarah Cron. Eighth, Maddie Evers. Ninth, Caitlin James. 10th, Izzy Capizella. 11th, Ashton Baldwin. 12th, Hayden Rubush. 13th, Ruth Hale. And 14th, Charity Delosier. From Class 1 middleweights, we're calling back Olivia Fisher from Shenandoah, Carly Buchanan from Augusta, and Samantha Wills from Fluvanna. From Class 2, we call back Marie Claire DeRozier from Shenandoah, Jackson Kelly from Clark, and Logan Cassiano from Loudon. And from Class 3, we have Casey Redifer from Grayson County, Kenna Kearns from Frederick, and Kenna Kearns from Frederick. Heavyweight Blackface Crossbreds Class 1, you should be in the ready area. Heavyweights Class 1, Brant Kibler, Emma Donnelly, Mariah Delosier, Ella Warnes, Hayden Wells, Nathan Paris, Isaac Miller, Emily Hammer, Liam Morris, and Reagan Gwaltney.
very, very competitive middleweight division. Our first class in the middles, I think just in that particular class, that this one was just the broken open, the widest and the stoutest in terms of her feature. This one gave us some consistent views of strength of top line, consistency and uniformity of depth of body. And then when we put her to the side, although not radical and eccentric up through her front end, she balanced and everything kind of fit. Sheep that comes out of the second class is tough for me because she's such an outlier. So many things. She's just bold and fresh and dimensional from every view. A sheep that's just extremely powerful, and for what she is, she's very good. She is just honestly typically not my kind. She's a little bit plainer. As you study her up through her chest, floor, and breastplate, she's a little bolder perhaps in the way she's built through the front 1/3 of her body. But that's an absolute beast in terms of just dimension and power and substance. Sheep that comes out of the final class, maybe just a nickel more my speed in terms of height of shoulder, youthfulness of chest floor, immaturity as you read her in terms of the way she's built in front of her shoulder. A sheep that is not overly massive from a muscularity standpoint, but if we judge her as an individual, that one's got plenty of mass and plenty of power. Very, very competitive lineup out here with some different bits and pieces. Let's congratulate each and every one of these, and I'll go select your champion in reserve.
Your champion comes out of Class 3, reserve from Class 2. Yeah. He was second out of class, what was he, second? Out of Class 2. So third overall was second place out of Class 2. Entering the ring now is our final group of commercial use for the day, our heavyweights. In Class 1, we have Brent Kibler of Shenandoah, Emma Donnelly of Clark, Mariah Delosier of Pittsylvania, Ella Warnes of Rockingham, Hayden Wells of Rockbridge, Nathan Paris of Pittsylvania, Isaac Miller from Wythe, Emily Hammer from Rockingham, Brent Kibler from Shenandoah, Liam Morris from Augusta, and Reagan Gwaltney from Augusta. Class 2, please check in. Heavyweights, Class 2, please check in. Alyssa Kopp, Jackson Kelly, Lucas Gwaltney, Grace Mast, Colton Thornton, Emily Hammer, Abigail Miller, Kylie Blevins, Sawyer Wilkins, Aubrey Ford, Kinley Ayler, and Meredith Day. Again, we want to thank all of our sponsors of the Sheep Show this weekend. We have Brookwood Farms, LT Hart, McPherson Farms, Montgomery County Farm Bureau, Heritage Farm Supply, May Valley Club Lambs, Virginia Sheep Producers, Blue Ridge Animal Clinic, Vicky's Income Tax and Computer Service, Ashley Club Lambs, Stevens Feed Mill, Real Family Club Lambs, Country Crossroads Vet Service, Abingdon Farm Credit, Umberger Feeds, ASM, Augusta Cooperative, Ridley USA, Showright 250, and the Blevins family. Today, for our top 5 commercial ewe and Virginia bred champion and reserve ewe sponsors, we have May Valley Club Lambs, LT Hart Trucking, Virginia Sheep Producers, Augusta Sheep Producers, Tri-State Vet Supply, Farm Credit of the Virginias, and Ashley Club Lambs.
again, a little more sword in this particular class. Besides our class winner, I had, not some trouble, but I had some decisions to make further down the line. I don't think I ever questioned that this one would win. As she comes in the gate, she appears to be extremely functional and correct in terms of her build. She's one that, for as massive as she is, still remains really youthful up front in terms of being clean and neat there at her breastplate, progressing into a really fresh and functional flank. A sheep that's really, really correct in terms of her top line. This one's got them beat when we put them on the move in terms of flexibility and her ability to maintain a consistent view in terms of her top line. Sheep that comes out next is one that just kind of defaults into second. She doesn't hit me really hard in any certain area, but there's nothing that I really want to tear her down about. Is she the longest bodied? Is she the shallowest? No. But is she proportionate in terms of the way she's built? I think so. If I could change a few things again, I would just shorten her blade and maybe make her just a nickel shallower there through the floor of her chest. I would extend her in terms of length of body and maybe freshen her right through the center of her loin. You that comes out next, I think it's a close pair between 3 and 4. I read that one to be just a notch more flexible in terms of movement. I think that one was a little bit more consistent in her top line when we put them into motion. She's not near fresh enough or wide enough over the top side of her loin. I think we just need to deepen that and make that just have a notch more progression as we get there to her hip. Sheep that comes out next has got some really interesting pieces. Very shallow at the floor of her chest, very fresh and expressive out of the top side of her shoulder. Issue of structure becomes her fault. She gets just too up and down in the angle to her blade and knee, which causes her just to elevate in her top and get a little steep in terms of her hip structure. We'll round the class out with maybe the densest sheep of the top 5, one that's extremely bold and big out of the backside of her blade. When we turn these things loose, this one gets the most conventional in how she's built up through the front 1/3 of her body. We need to lift her up in her breastplate. We need to smooth her up there at the point of her shoulder, give her just a notch more length ahead of her blade. Let's congratulate these kids one more time.
Results for our first class of heavyweight lambs. First place goes to Emma Donnelly of Clark County. Second to Ella Warrens of Rockingham. Third, Isaac Miller. Fourth, Reagan Gwaltney. Fifth, Brant Kibler. Sixth, Emily Hammer. Seventh, Hayden Wells. Eighth, Mariah Delozier. Ninth, Liam Morris. 10th, Brant Kibler. And 11th, Nathan Paris. Our second class of heavyweights is entering the ring. We have Alyssa Kopp of Washington County, Jackson Kelly of Clark County, Lucas Gwaltney, Augusta County, Grace Mass, Chesapeake City, Colton Thornton, Augusta County, Emily Hammer, Rockingham County, Abigail Miller from Wythe, Kylie Blevins from Washington, Sawyer Wilkins from Rockingham, Aubrey Ford from Albemarle, Kinley Ayler from Madison, and Meredith Day from Fauquier. Our final class of U's should check in now. Final class heavyweight U's, please check in. Willa Price, Samantha Wills, Sedona Sifford, Leighton Dudding, Kylie Blevins, Evelyn Dudding, John Hale, Hannah Cyphers, Samantha Wills, Colton Spangler, Chloe Delozier, Nathan Paris, and Ava Jenkins Hettinger. We need all of our champion and reserve division, champion and reserves from divisions to be getting ready. That includes hair sheep, white face cross, and white face as well.
Tell you what, a definite challenge. Again, we've said that a few times, but this is inherently more difficult for me because, again, I've discussed it a couple times, but there's a few things that I would definitely like to change about the top three, and a few things where they're very, very good. The Sheep That Begins is one that as she enters the ring strikes me as an ultra fresh, ultra high quality, functional type of a ewe lamb. Is she the widest and most broken open through the floor of her chest? No, that goes to the Sheep in second. Is she the most heavy duty and stout in terms of her bone and foot? That goes to the ewe lamb in third. But I think as we start adding totals up, this is kind of the one that I land on in terms of being just extremely fresh out of the backside of her blade. I see her being correct in terms of her hip posture in her hind leg. She offers us substantially more grow in terms of extension ahead of her blade, in terms of being more youthful in how she's built in her shoulder and the floor of her chest. I would like to pull her pins apart. I would like to see her move stouter from behind. The Sheep in second does both of that. I struggle with the ewe in second, getting her from the profile to make sense to me. When I get up over him, when I get in front of him, she's the one that I land on. When I get to the side, I struggle with her neck set. I struggle with her length of blade. I struggle with the floor of her chest. That's an absolute powerhouse. If that's the kind you like and gravitate towards, I'm 100% okay with that. But for me, from her navel forward, I just got to change some things about her. Is she impressive? 100%. Extremely good. Where she's good, she's really good. But I'd just like to, change her up through her front end. Ewe lamb here in third has got some pieces that are really exciting. That's an extremely tall-shouldered, extremely burly-legged kind of a sheep. One that I need to change a couple things on. She gets easy in her top line at times, but more specifically, I'd like to lengthen and level her hip structure, and I'd like to see her go more consistent in terms of the way she drives and utilizes that hind leg. But that's a really, really powerful sheep that's got some exciting pieces. Ewe lamb that comes out in third is extremely round in terms of her body shape. I love the length of her top line. I love the levelness of her top line. She's heavy duty when we take her to the ground. Of the remaining, or comparative to the previous, she's quite a bit more modest and bland in terms of the shape that she has right inside the backside of her blade. She's quite a bit softer in the way she handles right through the center of the loin. I need to freshen that one and square that one up from a muscularity standpoint. I told a young man, the ewe that's here in 5, when she's planted, she works a spot higher or two in my mind. When we turn her loose, though, she has a tendency to drop her front end. She elevates too much through the center of her spine. We need to level her out through her rump structure. Really competitive class, a lot of give and take. Congratulate these exhibitors one more time. That was a booger bear. That was a booger bear.
Results for heavyweight division class 2. First place goes to Kylie Blevins of Washington. Second to Emily Hammer of Rockingham. Third, Sawyer Wilkins. Fourth, Colton Thornton. Fifth, Jackson Kelly. Sixth, Abigail Miller. Seventh, Grace Mast. Eighth, Lucas Gwaltney. Ninth, Kenley Ayler. 10th, Meredith Day. 11th, Aubrey Ford. And 12th, Alyssa Kopp. Our final class of blackface crossbred heavyweights, class 3, we have Willa Price of Fauquier, Samantha Wills of Fluvanna, Sedona Sifford from Fauquier, Leighton Dudding of Craig, Kylie Blevins of Washington, Evelyn Dudding of Craig, John Hale of Hanover, Hannah Cyphers of Washington, Samantha Wills of Fluvanna, Colton Spangler of Floyd, Chloe Delosier, Pennsylvania, Nathan Paris, Pennsylvania, and Ava Jenkins Hettinger of Madison. We need our lightweight and middleweight champions and third overall to be in the ready area at this time. That's Reagan Babb, Hayden Rubush, and Henrik Wells for lightweights. And for middleweights, that's Casey Redifer, Marie Claire DeRozier and Jackson Kelly.
That one ought to get your attention. That's an awfully good sheep. Wait here, yeah, towards the end, last class, I guess, and you never know what to expect in larger classes. But when that one enters, everybody's kind of fighting for second. That sheep's awfully good in terms of her center cavity. She's awfully big up in terms of her hip shape. To be that big, stifled, and powerful, she doesn't give you a terminal look because she's so youthful and feminine up through the front 1/3 of her body. A sheep that gets out and moves very, very well, maybe just a notch too flexible at times. She has a tendency to get just a notch underneath herself there in terms of the way she goes at her hock, but extremely, extremely high-quality individual to win this particular class. Gets close at times between second and third. I see the blue sheep being just more consistent in terms of her underline. She's shoved up higher at the floor of her chest. She's more consistent in the way she collects herself in her top line. She, too, is big and stout when you get in front of them. For me, as I get up over them and view them down their top, that one needs to progress with more width through her pin bones to be more effective. I love the front 1/3 of her body. I love the consistency of lines. For me, though, she just needs to get powered up when we get in behind her. Sheep that comes out next, extremely tall-shouldered, really radical in terms of her rack shape. When I get up over her, she's so full it kind of throws that view off just a little bit in terms of how she ties her loin into the front side of her hip. She, too, needs to be a notch bigger in terms of her pin set. At times I catch her wanting to twist in ever so slightly there at her hock. We probably could make her just a nickel neater there at the point of her shoulder and floor of her chest. Youth X just really big and practical in terms of her center cavity, very stout in terms of her upper hip and pin set. She's got an advantage in terms of power over the sheep that set directly in front of her. We need to stouten her up at her ankle, make her more powerful in terms of her bone and foot, and then make her just a notch better in terms of the way she attaches her loin into the front side of her hip. And then we'll round the class out with a sheep that's very functional in terms of her basic build. I love the way she profiles in terms of strength of top. For me, she gets too flat when we evaluate her right through her fore and lower rib. And because of that, she needs to be just a little longer and kind of in her blade. She gets to be a little plainer when we turn her loose in terms of the way she holds her breastplate and lower shoulder. Great class. Congratulate these exhibitors again.
Results for our final heavyweight class. First place goes to Hannah Cyphers of Washington County. Second place, Kylie Blevins of Washington. Third goes to Samantha Wills of Fluvanna. Fourth, Ava Jenkins Hettinger. Fifth, Leighton Dudding. Sixth, Evelyn Dudding. Seventh, Chloe Delosier. Eighth, Samantha Wills. Ninth, Colton Spangler. 10th, Nathan Paris. 11th, Willa Price. 12th, Sedona Sifford, and 13th to John Hale. We'll now do our heavyweight division drive for black-face crossbred commercial ewes. From Class 1, we have Emma Donnelly of Clark. For second, we have Ella Warnes of Rockingham. And third, Isaac Miller from Wythe. For our second class, we have Kylie Blevins of Washington, Emily Hammer from Rockingham, and Sawyer Wilkins from Rockingham. And for our third class, we have Hannah Cyphers, Kylie Blevins, and Samantha Wills. After this drive, we will do the Grand Champion Commercial ewe overall drive, and we will also pick a Champion Virginia bred and Reserve Virginia bred commercial ewe. That will be right after this heavyweight drive. As a reminder, release time today is 2 p.m. and not at the conclusion of your particular show. Again, release for all animals today is 2 p.m. This is our agreement with the State Fair of Virginia. We have animals in here until 2 o'clock today, so do not release until 2 o'clock.
Heavyweights, again, was not a letdown. Our first class out of the heavies. I think pound for pound, when we start talking about complete sheep that have some bells and whistles, the one that comes out of the first class strikes me extremely hard. I think this one is so fresh in terms of her rib cage, so fresh in terms of the back shape that she offers, and she does so while still giving us a very quality look when we put her to the side. Extremely big and stout as you take her to her foundation. When we get really, really nitpicky, when we turn her loose, she has a tendency to get just a touch low there at the top side of her shoulder relative to her hip. But man, that's a very, very high quality, very complete sheep. A sheep that comes out of Class 2 just gives you a very good look from the side. If we just evaluate these things stuck from the side, I love the height of her shoulder, the correctness of her top, the hip and hind leg structure that she's got. Is she the widest and stoutest in here? No, she's not. She gets just a little closed up front. She doesn't base away with as much pin width and power from behind, but that's a very high quality sheep that gives us a great look from the side. Then you've got one that gives you kind of a knockout punch from the profile. We just discussed how stout and big-ended she was, how round and fresh she is through the center of her body. That one's extremely practical as we take her back to her rear rib and flank, and she does all that with laying neat at the point of her shoulder and being really fresh ahead of her blade. Awfully good set. Let's congratulate these exhibitors, and I'll go get our top three.
Your champion heavyweight comes out of Class 3. Reserve comes out of Class 1. And third overall comes from Class 2. All right, we'll start getting set up and organizing for our final drive. In the meantime, we'd like to thank our sponsors again for this weekend: the State Fair of Virginia, Virginia Farm Bureau, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia Youth Animal Science Program, VDAX, Farm Credit of the Virginias, First Bank and Trust, and the Ag Lending Division of the Bank of Botetourt. We also want to thank our judge again today, Mr. Cade Wilson, who is from Brownwood, Texas. Let's give our judge one more round of applause for today and thank him for being here at the State Fair of Virginia. Entering the ring now is our final drive for our Commercial U show. From the Hare Division, Mariah Delosier of Pittsylvania. This is a Virginia-bred ewe. From the White-Faced Cross, we have Brenna Pennybacker of Rockingham County, Ella Earhart of Augusta County with a Virginia-bred, and Emma Wisecarver from Frederick with Virginia-bred. From the White-Faced Division, we have Brenna Pennybacker from Rockingham, Whitley Kopp of Washington with a Virginia-bred, and Ella Earhart of Augusta County with a Virginia-bred. In our lightweight black-faced division, we have Reagan Babb of Chesapeake, Hayden Rubush of Augusta, which is Virginia-bred, and Henrik Wells of Rockbridge with a Virginia-bred. From the middleweight black-faced division, we have Casey Redifer of Grayson County with a Virginia-bred, Marie-Claire DeRozier from Shenandoah, and Jackson Kelly from Clark County with a Virginia-bred. And from the heavyweight division, we have Hannah Cyphers of Washington County, Emma Donnelly of Clark with a Virginia-bred ewe, and Kylie Blevins from Washington County. The top 5 commercial ewe and Virginia-bred champion and reserves Virginia commercial ewes for today are sponsored by May Valley Club Lambs, LT Hart Trucking, Virginia Sheep Producers, Augusta Sheep Producers, Tri-State Vet Supply, Farm Credit of the Virginias, and Ashley Club Lambs.
Tell you what, a tremendous lineup out here. You've heard me for the last 3 days. I'm sure you're over that and ready to kind of tie things together and head home. I'm ready to get home and see my 4 girls as well. You know, you get one shot at it, and I think it's important to to spend as much time in doing something that you love as you can. And this is a great venue. This is a venue that my family enjoys. We spend a tremendous amount of time in work and preparation, and I know there's people that do more than we do. We're kind of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. We do a little softball, we do a little barra showing, we do a little sheep showing, we do a little fishing, do a little hunt. What we try to do as a family, and I think it's important. And I hope as we progress forward in this industry, we don't let the banners and the trophies get in the way of that. And it's something that's very easy to do. It's something that as human nature, you know, second place is not fun. First place is where it's fun. And so we strive to excel and do the best we can. But I hope we don't lose sight of what's really taking place in this setting. Banners fade, buckles tarnish, trophies get dust on them, but the time that you spend with your family and the friends that you make along the journey are what you'll take to the grave and remember forever. Very, very fortunate to be here again. I thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the opportunity to sort through these things. This is my opinion, and that's all it is. I've tried to give you every kid a fair shake and discuss the things that I would like to change about the sheep. Take that for granted or for what it's worth, but I've had a great time. It's been an awesome youth show. Let's congratulate these exhibitors. It's going to take me a second to sort through this and get them all lined up.
Your champion commercial ewe comes from the heavyweight division of the black-faced crossbred ewe class. Your reserve also comes from the heavyweight division. That is also the Virginia champion, Virginia bred ewe for today. Third overall comes from the middleweight division. That is also the reserve Virginia bred for today. Fourth overall comes from the middleweight division. Fifth overall comes from our lightweight division. And that is our commercial ewe show for